Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 255. We have fan favorite Vic Tesolin back with us today, laughing and sharing woodworking knowledge and know-how. Are those not the same thing? With Anissa and myself. It's a great show, lots of laughs, of course. Before we get started, this is the time of year when everyone does their gift guides, and I really hate doing gift guides, and that's because as a woodworker, I don't want other people buying me tools and possibly getting it wrong. If you're going to buy me a tool, I want to be able to specify exactly what it is. So that makes me very, very difficult to shop for. If you're like me, you might just want to hint to someone looking to get you a nice gift that signing you up for Mike Pekovich's online course, Foundations of Woodworking, would be a pretty fantastic gift. As the only other person other than Mike who has seen it, I can fill you in that it is pretty incredible. It's mostly lectures and demonstrations, and he covers a lot of foundational topics that I, as a woodworker who does absorb a lot of woodworking content, thought I knew everything I needed to know about. But in every single element, even something as simple as drilling out and chiseling a mortise, I thought I knew exactly how to go about doing it in the most efficient way. But no surprise, Mike taught me a lot in even that simple section. So I really do believe that it is the type of online course that any woodworker would learn a lot from, and it would elevate any woodworker's skill set. All right, so head on over to foundationsofwoodworking.com, and there is a give a gift option. So maybe you could forward that on to your special loved one. Or if you know a young woodworker getting started and you think that this is the type of thing that would really help them along, this would be a great gift for them. All right, enough about that. On with the show. Here's Vic Tesolin, Anissa Capsalis, and me.
So are we starting, Ben?
All right, let's start. Okay. So we're going to start with this first question from JD. And let me preface it a little bit that you two might not know. A while ago, Barry and I did an episode, and it was like a single topic episode where each of us tried to assemble $1,000 shop.
Oh.
And it was polarizing.
It was polarizing?
Yes.
Oh.
Like hate mail, followed by just rabid applause, followed by hate mail. It was, people really loved it or hated it. So I think that's usually a good thing, right?
I got to go listen to it. I'm still catching up. I'm always about like 5 episodes behind.
I think a lot of people have a really hard time accepting that woodworking is really expensive, and that if you go into it thinking you need to spend $10,000, that creates a barrier, and lots of people will not go into it at all.
That's why I wrote my books, because people were... This
is why it's in the Vic folder. But, so like a lot of people just think it's just, you can't do it, right? So Barry and I tried to break it down to, okay, let's take $1,000, which is still a lot of money. And how would you spend that $1,000 to start woodworking? And the whole episode, we weren't really answering questions or anything. We were just debating how we would go about doing that. And so when this question came in, I thought, Vic, the minimalist woodworker, needs to spread the gospel.
Right.
For JD. And that was an Anissa.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So this is from JD. As a new woodworker, I really enjoyed the sub $1,000 episode, and I wanted to present a different challenge that always gets laughed off as a topic, apartment woodworking, which we've covered with Barry, who's in an apartment. But Vic, you have a well-known history of tiny workshops. Woodworking is becoming a popular hobby in the tech industry,
And unfortunately, a lot of us are stuck in cities with expensive real estate. If I had to guess, this is probably part of the reason for the rising popularity of hand tools. Unsurprisingly, there aren't many woodworking content creators in this situation. So nobody is really around to offer us advice on working semi-quietly in small spaces. I started around 6 months ago and pieced together what I could accomplish on my balcony. I'd love to hear some more ideas or at least a conversation on the topic. So, a balcony wood shop in the city. Vic, what you got for JD? What's important?
Well, I think as far as the balcony idea goes, that's a great place to do it because you're not worried about the noise disruption. The hardest thing with apartment woodworking, and I have a few buddies of mine who are in apartments, and their biggest thing is any mallet work is the tough one. So if you're going to mortise, and you're going to mortise using a mortising chisel, that is really loud. Not in the sense that it's like loud sort of decibel, but it shakes everything. And so the person below you will hear every single thud from your mallet. And so that's a problem, obviously, because your neighbors aren't going to be too friendly after that. And I suppose on a balcony would work just fine. Although you really do have to trust the science and the engineering that went into that balcony, to be like hitting stuff, and it's like every hit just kind of slowly degrading the concrete or something, and then all of a sudden you're on the 6 o'clock news. But I think that's the tough one is hitting, and like we don't think about how often you use a mallet to strike something, because we just pick it up and do it. But even cutting dovetails, you have to pair those dovetails somehow, pair the waste out, and so that's the big thing I think that a lot of apartment woodworkers struggle with. But my as far as space goes, I mean, like really, you don't need a ton of space. If you've got room for a little bit of a work table or a workbench, and then somewhere to store your tools, I think you're golden. I have a friend of mine in Ottawa who lives in I think it's like a 500 square foot bachelor apartment. And he has a workbench up against the wall in the corner by his balcony doors. Okay. And his coffee table is an old English chest. And so he puts his feet up on his tools when he's, playing, video games or whatever. And then when he woodworks, he just lifts up the lid and there's all of his tools. And if somebody comes over or whatever, he just puts like a sheet, like a, whatever over his bench, and it all but disappears. So, if you really want to do it, you can do it. So I guess the key is space is never really the issue. I mean, my smallest shop to date is 40 square feet. So, I mean, there's not a lot of space there. Yeah. So that's not the issue. The issue is the noise. And if you've got anybody below you, then that's where it's troublesome. When
your kid, who's an adult now, was young, were you ever in the situation where you were trying to woodwork while they were sleeping, and were you able to make noise whenever you wanted?
Yeah. So when Alex was little, she like little, she was 2 floors above me.
Okay.
I was in a basement and she was on the 2nd floor. So it really wasn't that, and there was running no power tools. I had a drill press, I think. Okay. So there really were no power tools. I was a member of a wood hobby club at that point, and so that's where I used all the machines, and then I would just bring everything home and then cut joinery and stuff like that at home. But even when she was older, at one point, her bedroom was right above the shop when I was in a small garage shop that I had. And it was, we had trained her to not really respond to noise. there was always so much noise around her. They were like, don't tiptoe around the crib and, all that other stuff. And so we didn't. And I mean, we would vacuum under her crib and she'd be asleep and she wouldn't wake up. And to this day, she can sleep through anything. So I guess that's a good thing or a bad thing if like the house is on fire, I suppose. But really, it wasn't an issue as far as noise. Now, I mean, if it's an apartment, and you've got like a baby's room and then your shop room like right next door, that might be problematic. But yeah, it was never an issue for us.
I know Barry is in an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, and one day he was like, huh?
I was going to talk about Barry too. We could do that because he's not here to defend himself. So we could say anything we want about Barry.
Well, yeah, we would if he was here either. So, but I remember one day he was like, I have new neighbors upstairs and they have a baby. And it was like, this is the end of my woodworking as I know it. But he's gotten really lucky, and he says they don't notice a router when he's running it, but
wow.
he totally is with you. He said mallets, it's like you can't cut mortises by hand without drilling and paring or something.
Right. Yeah. You'd have to drill first and then, yeah.
Yeah. Which is my preferred way of doing it anyway. So.
No, I agree. I think, that's if, a drill press is a really handy tool to have, even if it's just a small one, but I would suspect that depending on the acceptance of your neighbors or whatever, I feel like if you were to run some of the Festool stuff, like it's remarkably quieter than other power tools, especially the dust collection.
Yeah.
So I feel like you could probably get away with a little bit of that.
Yeah. What do you have you ever had this concern, Anissa?
I have not. My shop is detached from the house, so I do have people living upstairs from where I am. But I have the luxury of going out into the shop, which is in the backyard. I know that Barry also has kind of scheduled himself at times. I think, didn't he have a planer down in the basement? He has access to the basement or something. So I know that he would schedule himself so that when his neighbors weren't home, he was doing the machine work.
Yeah.
Or driving to my house and doing all the machine work here. But now you can go to the Taunton shop.
Yeah.
This also made me think of a couple things. We had an article a while ago with a guy who, it's kind of like the balcony thing with the guy, I think he was in Cyprus maybe, and he kind of he arranged his shop so he could open up, and we've seen a bunch of people do this in some of the tools and shops with some of their shop situations where they can, if they're in a warmer climate, they're collapsing everything and stowing it away in like a small semi-outdoor space or a tiny garage, and then they can open up and expand out, which works if you're in a situation where you can expand outside, like a duplex or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think Vic's point about kind of being efficient about the way you store things and having things do double duty is super smart. I remember Matt Kenny working on his balcony. We're hearing a story about that.
Yeah, I think when he first started. Yeah, yep.
My neighbor across the street, I remember he did a lot of woodworking, and I remember seeing all these fans up on the second floor of his house all the time. And it was years after I moved into the house, and he finally showed me his shop, which was on the second floor. He hauled all the machines up to the second floor. And his situation was he and his wife lived downstairs, and his shop space was upstairs. And that was like his venting. He would vent those fans out.
Oh, okay.
And he had some dust collection in there too, but he just kind of, it's a similar thing in that like he had to arrange, like when his wife wasn't home or watching TV, he was working. I think it's kind of navigating that when you have a lot of people around you.
Yeah.
I also remember when Vic was at Fine Woodworking Live, you might remember, do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, that was one of the best presentations. Like that was Yeah, that was a highlight of any Fine Woodworking Live.
It really was. And like,
you have to act like you're not here.
Yeah, everybody was cracking up. But I remember this one, Vic started out talking about his shop and how tiny it started out. And you were talking about the little Harry Potter thing under the staircase. And I think, Vic, you even put up a slide with the set from Harry Potter. And I think one of the audience, it was hard to tell when you were joking and not joking. And one of the audience members started asking questions about that. Somebody who had never seen Harry Potter, I guess, and didn't get the reference. And it was just super fun. We just kind of looked and kind of figured out what was going on. But I don't know. I always remember that slide of the Harry Potter bedroom under the steps. And
I remember that they thought that was my actual shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which not even I could pull off.
So Vic, like, give us your $1,000 shop. No pressure.
Okay.
How would you spend $1,000 and get into woodworking?
Okay, so
you kind of have a book about this, right?
I kind of do.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, what happened to Anissa?
I have no idea.
1 minute she's there, the next. Anyway, $1,000. You know, $1,000 sounds like a lot of money until you start pricing stuff.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, that's not a lot of money. So first of all, everything used.
Yep.
So jack plane. You need at least one panel saw, maybe two. And they don't need to be full-size panel saws, but just like a rip and a crosscut.
Mm-hmm.
You need a couple of few chisels. Not all of them, just some of them. Like, you know, maybe like eighth, quarter. No, not even eighth. Quarter, half, 3/4, quarter, half, and 1 inch, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
Something to hit them with. And if I'm starting off, I'm going to get the type of chisels that you can hit with a metal hammer.
Yeah.
Right, so not like...
Isn't that all of them?
Yeah. You hit your chisels with whatever you want, Ben. I'm not here to judge. Just don't come to my shop. But yeah, so something that, like, even if you were... You know, I've had really remarkable experiences with, like, Husky brand chisels from the Home Depot. Like, I've sharpened those up. Like, they have a pretty decent chunk of steel at the end of them. I mean, they're not flat. So, you know, you got to be doing that. But, you know, when you consider that a set of those chisels is, what, $20 maybe?
Yeah.
Like, I can cut dovetails with them, no problem. You're going to need something to sharpen with. So, sandpaper and some sort of flat piece of something.
It's doable though, right?
Oh, totally doable.
Yeah. Like, you can do some serious woodworking.
I'd have money left over for wood.
Well, oh, okay. All right. That's confidence there.
I could detail it out in a spreadsheet if you'd like, and then you can share that with people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's your next blog.
Okay.
Well, your last one I wanted to plug with the jack.
Oh, right.
Or you named it Jack and then I renamed it Look to the Jack or something like that. Or the Jack, whatever.
You're always changing my stuff.
I know, I got it. It's that stupid, like, search engine optimization Google blog.
Oh, that's the stuff Andrea takes care of.
Yes.
For me, yeah. I don't know anything about that stuff.
You're better off, man.
Thank goodness for Andrea.
Yes. It's totally doable, but it's a hard exercise. It's a hard exercise to come up with $1,000 to do some woodworking, you know? But it was fun. And
That's a cool exercise, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it took Barry and I over the course of weeks. We would just be talking and be like, oh, I'm gonna go change my $1,000 shop. And then, you know, we were just constantly tweaking it. And then we'd share them and we're like, no, you're breaking the rules there. You're going, you know,
it's like a fantasy football game.
It is like a fantasy football game.
You're picking your players. You're like, oh no, that's no good. This is better. And
yeah. But yeah, if anyone is in that situation, you got to check out Vic's book, The first one.
Thanks.
The minimalist woodworker, right?
What's wrong with the second one?
I have the.
They always say the sequel's not as good, but
the second one. Well, your second book's filled with more projects, right?
yep.
And like, what is it? It's like shop. Well, it's like house projects that I think you said one time it was like if you screw it up, it becomes a shop project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all projects that have a bit of duality to them, so that if you screw it up, then it just becomes a piece of shop furniture or what have you. But if it turns out nice, you can talk to the people in charge and you can get it put into the house.
Speaking of shop furniture, I've been meaning to ask you, how is your Baltic birch workbench holding up?
It's holding up. It's totally holding up. It's super heavy, super strong, really rigid. I'm not a big fan of Baltic birch as a bench surface.
Okay.
Mostly because I think what I screwed up, well, not screwed up. I had it in my mind that I would do layers of Baltic birch, maybe, 2 inches thick on edge, and then all the way across. And then I thought what I would do is I would put one piece of MDF, one piece of Baltic birch on top of the vertical pieces.
Okay.
And then the idea is that once that gets beat up, right, you can just unscrew it because it wasn't like permanently attached. And then you could basically have a sacrificial surface. So what I didn't anticipate was how easily it is to have your Baltic birch top get ugly looking.
Oh.
And so it's not even the aesthetics of it, but even even the drilling of the dog holes, like Baltic birch, that initial layer, like it was, I don't know if it was the bit I was using or what have you, but it was just, there was tear out in places and serious tear out that I couldn't even, disguise with a little bit of a chamfer. Mm-hmm. And so I don't mind seeing like chisel marks in the bench or the odd saw mark, but tear out around a hole just, I don't know, it does something to me. And so I'm kind of like, ugh. So I don't know. It's interesting. This whole benches thing, like I'm using like my MFT a lot, like with my hand power tools. And I'm really appreciating the sort of hole matrix and the clamping elements that you can use specifically to that type of a bench. And then you get guys like Ron Polk out in the West Coast that has that design for the bench, and you can use it for all kinds of stuff. It's basically a big torsion box essentially. But so anyway, I don't know. I'm at this point now where it's like I just need something sturdy and steady and everything else to work on. And the Baltic birch thing was a cool experiment.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would do it again. I think the next bench will be more, we'll have a solid wood base anyway.
Okay.
I think I like the design of the bench. I like the Nicholson style of bench where, you have that fairly big apron to be able to hold. But I think it's 12 inches of apron. It's a lot of apron. And then you run into problems getting underneath it. So you're sitting at your stool and only your knee gets under the bench, and then, you know what I mean? So that's kind of problematic. I thought about doing a cloud lift,
cool.
a knee hole, you would call that for a desk, right?
Sure.
Anyway, so I don't know. My problem is that I futz around with things.
But that's not a problem because we all get to learn from your mistakes.
Right. I'm glad I could help. But it's just one of those things where it's I don't know. I get these ideas about what if I did this instead of that? And, and so I'm playing with stuff and I'm trying different things, and it just, sometimes it works out. Other times it's a complete flop, but
I think it's good that people experiment. And I don't know, I made a tool chest a while ago. It's an utter flop of a design. But the whole time everybody's going, oh, you should just make a Dutch tool chest. And it's like, well, no, because people have done that. Everybody, like, we know it's a great design. Everyone knows it works, but
yeah,
like let's try and find other things too.
Well, I think that's my problem. I think that like I look at like the Rubo bench, for example. It's like you can't tell me that the 17th century was the pinnacle of workbench and work holding design. Like I feel like we've come a little further away from that. And I'm not trying to be disparaging. I think, I own all the bench books. I own every book that Schwarz put out about benches just because he's like me. He has this need to explore it. Mm-hmm. And so, but I mean, like I can't imagine that bench is like the be all and the end all of work holding and stuff, especially when you start considering more modern things like T-track and various other hold down methods. I mean, yes, the dog and the dog hole and all that other stuff has been around for, a long, long time. But I just feel like there's, could do it differently or do it better or something. And so, this plywood bench was supposed to have nothing but T-track through it. Oh. And that was how I was going to do things. So planing stop, you just slide it along the thing, lock it in place, and then use it. If you were going to be cutting mortises, you would just have one of those like hold downy things that, registers in and I was going to have no traditional work holding at all. Right. And then I lost my nerve and didn't do it.
Well, you could always add them in.
Well, you can do, but then I've got that on top of the holes, and where I would put the T-track is where the holes are. Yeah. Right? Because that's why you put them there in the first place. And so then it's like, oh, well, maybe I'll do another top. And then it's like, if I have to rip more strips of Baltic birch, like I'm just done. Like I'm not doing it. So anyway, I don't know. I'm gonna figure something out. What I want to try to do is figure out something that is a cross between an MFT and a stout workbench. Okay. That's my goal, is to try to figure out something that has the work holding of an MFT combined with the stoutness. And because, you start hand planing on something that's rickety and that's no fun for anybody. That's like putting your table saw on wheels. Like would
you have the grid? Because when I think of MFT, like one of the biggest... All right, for listeners who don't know, MFT is Festool's multifunction table. Yeah. Right? Okay. And it is a MDF grid of holes where they're perfectly spaced. They're CNC'd perfectly spaced. So if you put dogs here and then a fence there or whatever, they are 90 degrees. Or if you use this set of dog holes, they're 45 degrees or whatever from each other. Yeah. And years ago, I actually found in this resale shop in Nashville, I found an MFT top for, I think I paid like $10 for it.
Wicked.
Yeah. And I built an outfeed table around it with some 80/20 aluminum extrusion, so I could use the Festool clamps and all that stuff. And I really, really liked it. Right. And then in my new shop, it just wound up in a corner, and I wound up selling it to someone about a year ago
for more than $10.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of extrusion. A lot of that 80/20 aluminum extrusion is not cheap. No. So I probably broke even on it.
That's fair.
But I love the idea of that grid. Where put the dogs there, build a fence that works here. Yeah. Set up your track saw, zip, you've got a 90-degree cut. I love that.
There's something about bringing the tool to the work. Yeah. I think that's why hand tools have got, you know what I mean? Instead of like even just think of like the ultimate situation, which is like a big sheet of plywood. You know what I mean? Wrestling that up onto a table saw is an exercise in itself. And if you're doing it by yourself, it's horrible. And so like being able to just lay a track onto a line and cut, you know what I mean? You think about all of the jigging that you have to do on a table saw, like, using an L fence, and then you have to have like some sort of like a pattern situation, and then like all that other stuff. Whereas you could just literally drop the track on the line and cut it, Yeah. And so And I started using. I ordered from Axminster Tools in the UK. They have their own brand name is UJK, and basically they make they work with Peter Parfit.
Yeah.
Who Peter Parfit, if you don't know, is the guy who does all of the sort of jigs and fixtures and hole drilling jigs.
Like kind of like woodworking mad scientist guru guy. British. And, yeah.
And so they work with Peter, and he's come up with all kinds of cool things like mobile stops and like fence systems that you just use your dog holes to create like a thin fence for when you're working with thinner materials. And anyway, so I've just been playing with all that kind of stuff, and it's really kind of cool. But again, it's like at some point I got to make something. So in between I'm building things, but at the same time I'm playing with everything at the same time, which is probably not a good way to do it, but it's a lot more, it's fun for me.
Yeah. Do you have any experience with MFT or anything?
I don't. I wish I could add something here, but I just don't.
It's a cool concept. I went down the rabbit hole pretty heavy at one point, and I think it's there's fans of it and there's haters, of course, as with anything in woodworking, but I think there's a lot to be said for the system and all that jazz.
Well, there's also a fella that Mike Farrington. Yeah. So Mike Farrington does some stuff with the sort of MFT style, but like he's kind of made them sort of like to work the way he works.
Yeah,
which I think is really cool. I've been I hadn't heard of Mike Farrington until like I don't know. I think one of you guys was talking about Mike Farrington. And so it's like, who's Mike Farrington? And so I went and checked him out, and I was like, I got onto his YouTube channel, like I was done. I was like, the way the guy presents information is hilarious. Mm-hmm. Like it's just so funny and so dry, and like he's like watching a British comedy. He's like,
I was just gonna say,
you know, like the jokes are so dry, and you don't really know that they're jokes, but And the shop apprentice discovered a new tool today, and it's like just like really, really, really great videos. And it's like he has all kinds of interesting ways that he uses that dog hole matrix system. Including he makes that bench that's like beams that you can like link together.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So that's in my brain right now. It's like stewing around, and I'm like,
you got Farrington.
I got Farrington, but the problem, so that it's a good verb. But yeah, the thing I want to try to experiment with is that, of course, because of the nature of his work, his is very portable, and so that is like that's the thing I don't want. I don't want to be able to take this down and take it away, but the premise of how he's using it for work holding has very valid uses within the shop as well, where, in lieu of a traditional workbench.
So that's like that. And I think if I'm on 10 podcasts, probably 3 of them, I'm constantly going back to that Josh Finn bench, which is those 2 beams on the this two, with the one side homoso on the 2 horses. And I was actually thinking about that when we were talking about the apartment thing. Like build a shorter version of those, some horses that can collapse, or even just buy the horses from Home Depot and shove them under a bed when you're not using them.
Or use them as a towel rack like Barry.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And Andrew Hunter's the same thing, right? Yep. He uses 2 beefy sawhorses and a piece of wood. And it's
it's 3 pieces of wood, so he can break it up how he wants it. And and there's another pretty good woodworker in there too, Andrew Hunter. So we got Farrington, Andrew Hunter, Josh Finn. So maybe this modular workbench thing.
Yeah, the whole point of thinking about all this is that it's been a long time since Anissa's been into my shop, so I'm trying to come up with a magazine article to get her to
Are
come
we
up to Canada.
YJing right now? We're pitching articles and
Yeah.
You were the last shoot that I did before all hell broke loose all over
Way
the
to
world.
go, Vic.
I drove up to Canada, and
You drove? We drove too. It's
I
not that
drove
bad.
up to Vic's, and I think maybe a week later, two things happened. Two of the tires that I was driving on blew out, like right next to my house, which it was great that that didn't happen while I was driving back from Canada. But I think maybe a week later we were shut down, maybe 2 weeks tops. But you were the last travel shoot that I did before COVID.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm going to have to go find those notes because I think we had like 50 ideas for other articles.
At least.
Yeah.
And maybe we could sub a few in for some of those 20 Pekovic articles.
He has a new book too, if you haven't heard.
Oh yeah.
You know what? I haven't got it yet. I was gonna order it for him to sign it, but then I saw pictures of all the books he had to sign, and I kind of felt a little bad for him, so I thought I would just wait.
Yeah, he had a pallet the other. I pull up to his house. I was like, "Why do you have a pallet? Did you get a new machine?" He's like, "I have a ton of books."
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. You get the signing cramp.
I'm sure you go through it.
It happens, not to the same extent as Mike, because Mike's a superstar, but it's one of those things.
Let's see. Let's hit another question.
Okay.
And this comes back to something that you mentioned earlier, and this is a great question. This is one of those. My favorite questions are the ones where I go, I know exactly who should answer this, because I want to know this answer too.
Right.
All right. So, from Damon, I have a medium tooth blade for my Veritas low angle jack plane. I can't find much info on sharpening this kind of blade, but the instructions from Veritas say sharpen and hone only the bevel. Do not hone the face of the tooth blade, or you will damage the sharp points that actually do the cutting. I'm confused by that as well. Does this mean that I don't even remove the burr from honing the bevel? How do you approach this kind of blade? And I have never been as much of a believer in a toothed blade as when you showed it at Fine Woodworking Live that time. And the absolute fast way you could flatten a piece to go through a planer. So
Yeah.
You made me a true believer, and I've been meaning to get a tooth blade for my bevel up jack too.
Right. So the whole purpose of the tooth blade really in a bevel up plane is that, in order to, if you needed to camber the blade back, because you're doing rough work with it, right? So if you consider using a Bailey, jack plane, you're going to bring those corners right back so that you're almost using it like a scrub plane. Yeah. So you can take big, beefy shavings off. Well, because the blade angle is so low on a low angle plane, you would to pull, you can't, the geometry doesn't allow you to pull the corners back as much as you'd like to. So then a tooth blade works really well because you're only essentially cutting with half the blade.
Oh,
because half the blade is engaged, the other half is a gap in the teeth, right?
Okay, yeah.
So what that does is it makes it easier to take a heavier cut, even though you end up with sort of like a corduroy pants situation. Whatever happened to corduroy pants?
Oh, corduroy pants are great.
Well, it's also my favorite children's book, Corduroy.
Oh, right, corduroy, yeah.
That was a good one.
Hey, did you need a minute, Ben?
Well, no, I actually had a dad moment because my kid every now and then will come up and go, "Let's read this one for you," and it's like, "Aw,
that's nice."
Yeah, sorry, moving on.
Yeah, so the tooth blade, basically, you're cutting, you're not cutting, you're cutting, you're not cutting, all the way across. So that effectively makes it easier, because if you tried to take that same thickness of shaving with a full blade, you'd have to Happy Gilmore it, right? You'd have to like run from across the room and throw yourself into it. So, which could be fun too, I guess. There's an idea. Never mind the thinnest plane shaving competition. Let's do the thickest plane shaving competition. Next Fine Woodworking Live. I'm running it.
Right.
This is how we attack TikTok.
Yeah, we need EMTs on site for that one.
Yeah. I think so.
We're incorporating the running start.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Maybe we'll like maximum 10-meter start. Like you can't like go further than that. A meter is a unit of measure in metric. That anyway, it's like a yard, but better. But anyway, so as far as the blade goes, right? I haven't looked at the instructions for that blade. I certainly didn't write them while I was there, because I don't quite understand what that means.
Me neither.
I don't know what the face of a blade is. To me, you got the back and the bevel. I don't know what the face of a blade is.
Now, it's possible this is not a direct quote, or could be a misquote.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt for sure. I always treat that, and when I worked for Veritas, I taught people how to sharpen this blade, and I have always taught that you treat this blade just like any other blade. So you sharpen it on the bevel, and then just the finest stone on the back to remove the burr. That's it. Okay. You don't obviously, you don't want to work on the back of the blade so much that you like cut all the teeth out, right?
Yeah.
But if you're touching that with your 8 or 10,000 grit stone for a few passes just to take the burr off, you're not going to do that ever.
No.
So yeah, I treat it just like any other blade.
Okay.
And so do the bevel, hone it up. Some people say, oh, it doesn't need to be as sharp. Well, yeah, I guess technically it doesn't. But why wouldn't you just sharpen it? You know what I mean? Sharpen it.
You're there.
You're already there. You already got it in a jig. Like just, go to the next stone, I guess. And then that's all you have to do to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what, not like you could damage the sharp points. I'm not sure how that would happen.
Maybe if people are bringing it back to like their 220 or something, I don't know.
I guess, but I mean, really, anything that's made in North America, Lee Nielsen or Veritas, like those blades are like super flat.
Yeah.
And like you don't have to do a ton of work with them. You don't have to fettle the mouth or do anything, crazy to it.
What did you just say?
Fettle the mouth.
What is that?
Fettling is like...
I think I know what it is, but I'm dealing with Vic Tesolin, so I need to make sure.
It's a euphemism, Ben. Yeah, fettling is just like adjusting.
Okay.
It's just adjusting. So fettling, like if you have like an old Stanley plane that maybe you're putting a replacement iron in and it doesn't quite go through the mouth because the irons are thicker now, you fettle the mouth, you open the mouth with a file and make adjustments.
Okay. You learn something new every day.
It's not as that's my goal in life, Ben, is to teach every day.
Fettle, F-E-T-T-L-E?
Yeah.
Sounds like it, right? What are you looking it up?
No.
Oh.
Maybe.
No, I'm just staring into my lap and asking how to spell fettle. Huh. What's it mean? You're not on Urban Dictionary, are you?
Oh, goodness, no. Because then poor Barry and Ben would get a text message saying, wait, did you know this means this?
Or what was the one the other day? I said this to someone, and my friend said it meant this. And we were like, no, they're just...
But then she was right.
All right, we're not getting into this.
Yeah, we better not.
So what does fettle mean?
What did you say fettle means?
What I'm asking you what the device says.
Great pod.
I don't know. It's just given me, I shouldn't be doing this while we're on here because one, I can't see, but two, it's talking about your competitive spirits are in fine fettle. Your ability to take the lead is enhanced during the upcoming 4 to 5 weeks. It's like, I have to get on a better site, which is not what I'm on.
Okay. All right.
So,
but anyway, yeah. So
if any of the listeners know what the definition of fettle is, please leave it in the comments below.
Because clearly Ben and I do not know.
No, I know because Vic told me.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe
clearly Ben and I have never heard the word fettle.
But fettle is
Where's Barry? Where's Liz?
It's condition. The aircraft remains in fine fettle. To trim or clean the rough edges in a metal casting or a piece of pottery before firing.
Huh. All right.
That's from the Oxford Dictionary.
I might fettle this part out of the final edit.
This is a learning moment. Why would you... Like, it's not all about entertainment, this podcast. You know what I mean? Like, why don't we try learning something once in a while?
All right, let's take a break. Happy holidays from everyone at Garrett Wade. This is the time of year when we all have an opportunity to show the people closest to us, our friends, coworkers, and families, what they mean to us through small or big acts of kindness. For over 45 years, Garrett Wade has offered personalized gifts to ensure each gift that you give is unique and built to last. They work with family businesses all over the world to find and develop these unique, hard-to-find tools and gifts that will last for generations. From now until December 5th, all Shop Talk Live listeners will receive 15% off any order of $125 or more. To redeem the offer and view their tools, go to GarrettWade.com. That's Garrett with 2 R's and 2 T's. And at checkout, type in code GIFTS, GIFTS, to redeem your 15% discount. Shop now to find the perfect gifts for everyone on your list, including yourself. Garrett Wade tools are always guaranteed. If they don't perform like they promise, send it back, no questions asked, and they'll pay the return shipping. Happy holidays. All right, who wants to do a segment? All-time favorite something? Anissa?
Sure. So I just finished up the shell to, I started working on this treehouse for my kids forever ago. And I have the platform done, and I finally, like, the whole thing is, it's safe for them to go up there. They're not going to fall out of the treehouse. So it's not exactly what I had planned. I wanted it to be curved around, and at a certain point, I ended up thinking, you know what, the kids are going to be in college at some point, and they're going to have graduated high school, and they're not going to care what the treehouse looks like, and they're not even going to pay any attention to anymore. So I figured, just forget your curved Richard Serra-esque treehouse and just do rectilinear. So I ended up using cedar fencing slats. You know how you could buy them separately, and skim them off in the planer just to smooth them out a little bit. And that's the exterior, and they're at different heights, and I'm going to suspend this clear roof over the top. Anyway, so a friend of mine was helping me. I was cutting all the pieces to the different heights, and when it came to framing around where the windows were going to be, so it's the difference between the way woodworkers work and carpenters work, and it's the way these guys who don't do the fine woodworking think about things and work on things. It like blows my mind, because they're so, like, we're just kind of just stupid about the way we overthink everything and overanalyze and over-engineer, and they just look at things and they're like, oh, bam, bam, bam. So I had all these different heights of the slats that were going up around, and it kind of went in a pattern. And very quickly we had the miter saw stand set up outside, and he was just like, okay. And he had this little bench that he sets up with his miter saw on. And he said, this is all you have to do. And he screws a board onto the thing. He cuts the first one, measures out, and there's just a mark for each different height. And I'm not measuring anything. I'm just cutting a batch of these this size on that line, a batch on that line. Anyway, that was super smart. But then so he was up, I was cutting everything to the size that I wanted and just choosing the boards where I wanted them to be. And he was just up there screwing in the boards when I handed them to him in the pattern that I created and was cutting. And when it came to framing around the windows, some of those boards needed to have a notch out of them to accommodate the window where it landed. And so I know the trick about holding the board on end at a miter saw and just cutting it that way, just notching down. And then I'm sitting here trying to figure out how I'm going to do that long run. And he's looking at me like, you're taking that in there to the table saw. Then you're going to, like I had this whole, I was going to just bring the blade up to the spot that I wanted it, run it, turn the table saw off, pick the piece up. And he pulled out a little, I think it was a Makita, I'm not 100% sure, little handheld battery operated circ saw, tiny little thing. That I want one. That thing was amazing. Sitting here thinking of all the times that I would go into Home Depot or Lowe's to get a sheet of plywood, and I would have this list of how I wanted to have them cut it down for me on the panel saw so I could fit it into my vehicle. I would take that thing, like the next time I have a cabinet thing going, and just do it in the parking lot. And that thing was amazing. And I was just able to just pivot down on it. I mean, you could do that with a regular circular saw too, but the size of this thing and the battery operated portion of it, it was great. I can see me using that in the shop a bazillion times over. So
yeah, those are one of those tools that seems like, well, even the battery powered trim router, when they first came out, I was like, that's so stupid.
No, it's great.
And now it's like, no, I love my little Ryobi battery powered trim router for
me too.
One little thing. I always wish I had the battery powered circ saw.
Yeah, me too.
Black Friday.
Coming up. Yeah. I worked construction for a while, and it was a 14.4 volt DeWalt, little circ saw. And my boss called it Tiny Elvis. I don't know. But he'd go, hand me Tiny Elvis. And he'd throw it up and he'd, just be able to do a plunge cut or zip something off real quick. And super handy to have.
Yeah, really, really nice. It's so much fun to use.
I have a technique stolen from David Johnson.
Ooh.
And Sidecar Furniture on Instagram. And I've started doing repairs for people and just, fun furniture repairs on the side. Most of them. Sometimes they're not fun. But it turns out that all furniture is just put together with 3/8 inch dowels. Like everything I get broken, it's always from the 50s or so. And it's always just 3/8, like a single 3/8 inch dowel holding every joint together, right? And there's a lot to be said for 3/8 inch dowels because this stuff has held up for its reasonable lifespan, right? But the great thing about any of these little cheap dowel joints is when they get loose, you can normally kind of wiggle them apart and slide a flush cut saw in there and saw whatever's left of that dowel and get the thing apart. But then you've got a dowel in the piece. Well, David wrote a blog one time about repairing some, $1 billion chair probably. And, but in there, he showed how he excavates out a broken dowel joint, basically. And I would have never thought to do this. It makes perfect sense after you see it. But if I was trying to, back before reading this, if I was trying to take apart or excavate a 3/8" dowel out of a joint, I probably would have started with a 3/8" drill bit and tried to perfectly center that drill bit and just get it perfect, right? Well, no, he goes in there with he drills a 1/4" hole or whatever in the center of the dowel joint and then just breaks it apart from the inside. So that hole gives room for you to like take a awl or an ice pick or something and just rip that dowel apart from the inside out. You pull it out and there's that perfect 3/8" hole that was originally drilled at the factory. And the good thing is you're not re-drilling anything. And so the factory holes will now line back up when you put another dowel in there. So for me, I just, I put another dowel in there and a lot of that G-Flex epoxy that Mike Michelli hipped me to. And boom, done. And you don't have to worry about, because if you re-drill anything on these curved pieces or whatever, you're never going to get it perfectly lined back up if you're making that joint again. And but using the factory joint, and if you're really worried about it, you could get the dowel out and then drill an oversized hole by just centering the bit on the 3/8" hole. But yeah, that I've been doing that a lot lately, and it's just drill that dowel out and just break it apart from the inside.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Super smart.
Yeah. Do you have anything, Vic?
Actually, it kind of marries up nicely with Anissa's story, but it's about battery-powered tools and how, like, I think they're awesome. And a recent one was I used. So I have and again, I don't want this to turn into a bunch of like hate mail, but I use the DeWalt platform. So I have like DeWalt batteries with all of the, with all the various, including the chainsaw, which works awesome. But in fact, the guys that came to cut down this big Siberian elm tree we had, the guy that was up at the top doing all the limbing work and stuff, all he had was a battery powered saw. And they're super light. You don't have to get gas up there. I mean, you have to get batteries up there, but it's not a big deal. Anyway, so a neighbor had gifted me 2 massive planks of mahogany. And they were used in an exterior application back in the day, and they had like white paint all over them. And I mean, like they were on a building and painted. These like mahogany that was like 5/4 by like I don't know. Sorry, it's half a meter wide. I don't know. I measured it.
Wait, is that 4 miles or?
Yeah, 4 miles. Yeah, no, it's a pint, Ben. Jeez. So, and then like one is like 5.5 feet tall and the other one is 4 feet tall. So these big pieces of, as I've come to find out, pretty much pattern grade mahogany.
Wow. That
was attached to the side of a building.
These are the ones I saw them on Instagram. I didn't see that they were, wow. Yeah. These are beautiful boards.
Beautiful boards. And so he unfortunately recently had a stroke and as, not able to work, with wood and stuff like that. And so he said, listen, I know you're a woodworker. He says, do you want these boards? And so I tried to give him money for them and he wouldn't take it, but he was just going to give me these boards. And so I was like, okay. So anyway, I wanted to make him a dovetail box for him and his wife, kind of as a thank you, nice. For out of the mahogany. And then so I'm looking at these boards and I know how old they are. They're like from the 50s or something. And so I'm thinking, what are the chances of there being lead in this paint? That you know what I mean? Because I was originally just going to sand all the paint off. And I thought, So anyway, handheld power plane.
Oh.
Battery.
Wow.
I stuck the Festool hose into the end. It fit miraculously. And I fired that thing up and it was like across and I'm like planing like 3 inches across and there's no dust because it's all getting sucked out, and I'm not making dust out of the paint.
Yeah.
I'm like getting under the paint and getting the whole thing out. Anyway, in like 3 seconds flat, I had this thing like completely stripped of paint, and it was flat, and it was like, I'm looking at this thing going. And then I looked over at my like hand planes, and I'm like, anyway,
Vic's new $1,000 shop for
seriously,
battery powered planes.
and the handle, like you just click, 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 like goes up by like I don't know 64ths of an inch.
What? So like 0.5 millimeter?
Yeah, and it has a rabbit fence so that you can like cut a rabbit with it.
Oh, no way.
And I'm like, oh my God, this thing is awesome.
Huh.
Anyway, so that was my favorite tool of all time for today. But
I've
yeah,
never used a power plane.
No,
you make me want to use a power plane.
I'm telling you, it's like if you've got, so like talking about, if you've got like boards that are not flat or whatever, and like just looking at them where the high points are, and sometimes they're so bad, even putting them on the jointer is like, they're flopping around all over the place. You take this thing and you just knock those high ends off real quick. It's like, it's an unbelievably quick and surprisingly accurate machine.
Sorry.
No. So I think that's like, the only thing you have to worry about is that you get plain tracks with it because, of course, the blades aren't cambered back. But I could fix that.
Would you have anything?
I think I have a blog or a video, Ben, of Toshio Odate at SUNY Purchase at Furniture Society.
He's on it.
What?
He's on it.
I'm just making a note to put it in the show notes.
I'm pretty sure I either did a blog or I got him on video because Toshio Odate was doing a demo, and he was flattening this board, and he has all these like Japanese tools all over. Everybody's like geared for this moment where he's just going to start doing his Japanese hand tool thing on this board. He turns around, he goes into this box on the floor by him, and he pulls out his power plane. He gets to work on that board before he hit it with any of the hand tools. And everybody just went. It was very surprising, but he hit the board first, and he did a lot of what Vic is saying with high points, low points, and cleaned it up first with the power plane.
And again, it's like, I'm not married to the hand plane about its like romantic nostalgia or anything like that. It's like, in some cases, if you've got a 15-inch wide board and you don't have a 15-inch planer, well, it's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But if you can do that with a power plane, like, you know what I mean? It's like when Christian Bexford, first time I saw the article where he's making this beautiful shaker chest of drawers, he knocks the whole thing down onto its back. He's like, meh, with the belt sander to get everything level. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Because like, how the heck else do you do that? It's like, and then I take a whisper shaving off of each drawer. No, you don't. You got to make money, yo. And like, I don't know. I think it's awesome. I think stuff like that. And I remember teasing Adrian Ferrazzuti one time because he was, of course, he went to College of the Redwoods too. And like, all these beautiful hand planes with like sculpted bottoms for like doing chair seats and stuff. And I remember he did those chairs with the bloodwood seats. I think they were actually an article in Fine Woodworking.
Yep.
It was a back cover, I think.
Right? Yeah. And I remember teasing Adrian saying, "Oh my God," because he does that thing where he puts a platen in the belt sander.
Oh, yep.
Puts a curved platen
curved
on the bottom
platen
of the
in the belt sander, and then use that to sculpt the seats. And I remember teasing him saying, "Oh my God, like Jim's gonna kill you," right? And he's like, "Hey, if Jim wants to shape bloodwood seats with a hand plane, he can go and do it."
And I'll just go skateboard for the day.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, these geniuses. Adrian Ferrazzuti.
Yeah. He's another one.
His Instagram feed.
I know, it's bananas.
It's not like he posts like once a month, but every post blows my mind.
It's solid, yeah.
And speaking of Instagram, Toshiodate is on Instagram now too.
No, really?
Yes.
Oh, wait. I won't go do that now.
I will.
You know what? Well, I guess that probably about does it. Shoot, let's answer a really, really quick one. Vic, which one do you want to answer really quick? All right.
The pin on the plane.
Yes. All right. From Alex, I have a question for Vic Tesolin.
Okay, I'll see you guys. Bye.
Do you really have to go?
No.
Okay. In issue 2, because we're going late, that's why I asked. In issue 288, Vic has an article on making a handplane where the blade is secured in the body with a wedge that sits in grooves in the side of the plane body. On Vic's blog post, how to put down a plane, you can find a plane that has the blade secured with a wedge pressing against the cross pin like you would see in a Krenov style plane. Is there an advantage or disadvantage between one or the other? Is there a minimum diameter for the cross pin that would put good pressure on the blade without denting the wedge itself? And then I have to say, just because this always makes me happy, great show, everyone. It almost goes without saying, but Shop Talk Live is the reason why I got my Fine Woodworking Unlimited membership. Thank you, Alex. So Vic and editor of Vic for that article.
Yes.
Let's say ye.
Yes.
So, so first of all, that plane that's in that article, I don't like talking about it because there was a lot of trauma surrounding that plane.
Caused by your editor.
You have to do this right now.
Because I sent that plane to my editor, Anissa, and it disappeared, and I thought that the plane was gone forever, and it was the proudest article I had ever written for Fine Woodworking, and I thought it was gone forever. And anyway,
whose trauma are we talking about here? Yours or mine? or everybody I went to and said, "Do you have Vic's plane? Because I know I don't have it. I know I don't. I know I don't have this plane."
Oh, it's so funny.
Trauma?
And I remember getting all of the emails, and it's like, you're like, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, it's a hand plane. I don't care. I'll just make another one. But anyway, so no, there was no trauma, but it was a funny story nonetheless. Anyway, the plane made it back. It's still here. It's still, everything's good. Anyway.
Yeah, I had the plane the whole time. The whole time.
Right. It was tucked away with your tax paperwork, you said.
Yes, it was. I never looked in that box. It
literally was tucked away with your taxes?
Well, no, it was tucked away in one of those banker's boxes that my taxes have been in for years, and I shoved it in my office. And again, this was the last shoot I did before COVID. So when we were all leaving the office, I didn't really think we were going to be gone we're still gone. We're still not back in the office. I thought like, oh yeah, well, I'll see you next week, Ben. Like we're not, this is, and so I think I didn't bring a lot of stuff. I don't even think, and then I think I ran back in at some point, maybe a week or 2 weeks later and just started throwing stuff.
I mailed you stuff.
Yeah. And then remember when Jay was in there and we were giving him lists and he was the only one allowed in, but we could give him lists and pull things out and
meet him in the parking lot.
Like, man.
All right. Let's answer poor Alex's question.
Okay.
Sorry. Anyway, so there was a lot of, we'll have another podcast specifically on the excitement that came with this plane. But anyway, so yeah, there's different ways to secure a blade. And so traditionally, like the English would put a wedge into those sort of abutments that were cut in. The Japanese do it. They don't use a wedge. They actually, like, the blade wedges itself into those abutments because a Japanese blade is tapered thicker at the top and wider at the top as well. So it's double tapered in. And so that's a really good way to hold a blade in place because you're getting like good pressure all the way up and down the blade. So the Crenovian style planes typically have a little bit wider of a cross pin, right? So it's made out of wood. A lot of times, I think they're about a half an inch of a flat placed on them so that you have a half an inch pressing down on the wedge, and then that sort of holds the blade in place and everything's good. So then I had been playing with using a piece of just dowel of not wooden dowel, but like brass dowel.
Oh, okay.
And so because really when you think about it, when you put the wedge under there, like provided that your wedge is shaped properly and it's nice and flat, it's not going to bend in the center, right? You're going to get like equal pressure all the way up, and then the holes that basically become the shoulders, I guess, if you will prevent it from moving. And so you can tap a wedge in underneath one of those, and you'll get good wedging action as well. So I think theoretically, the wider the bearing surface you have is going to wedge more completely.
Okay.
But I've never had any problem with the brass dowel pin, and that's 1/4 of an inch normally.
That's what I was just about to ask. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, like anytime you use sort of a rounded surface, technically the wedge is going under, and then you're catching sort of like the tangent of the pin, and then like it's going to sort of rub on the material. Now, as long as you use like a decent hardwood, as you would normally make a plane out of, and not like a piece of like cheese, it won't dent, right? So obviously if your wedge was made out of pine and you like tapped it in there, then it's going to leave a dent, and then it's going to become problematic. But all the woods that I use for different planes, like it's always worked out fine. I just made one out of cocobolo, and like I think the cocobolo is harder than the brass, to be honest. So it wedges in fine. I'm sure there's all kinds of experts on the internet that could disagree and say that the wedge design is better or whatever, but it might theoretically be better. But in the end, you still have a plane blade secured and held in place while you work. So
and if it functions, it functions.
Right.
Like if your plane's working, it's working, and the advantage to that is ease, right? As opposed to
my goodness, yeah. Because a Crenovian one, you got to start with a square piece of wood, and then you got to make round tenons on it, and then you have to make sure you put that pin in when you do the glue up. You only do that once, and then with the pin, you drill a hole into the first cheek, right, with a block in between, and then carry it on through, and then you just tap that thing all the way across, and it works perfectly.
So it's all about just getting it done and getting to work.
Yeah, and I mean
making a hand plane that works and isn't a barrier.
Right. Like, and I mean, his question specifically was like, is there an advantage or disadvantage? I don't think so. They both work. And his other part of the question was, does it dent the wedge? And it's like, if you use an appropriate wood, like you don't want to make like a plane out of walnut, right? And then use a walnut wedge, because that's not going to take it very well. Maple is about as soft as I would go.
Okay.
Right. And so then after that, you're just fine.
Okay. Minimum diameter would be your 1/4 inch, you think?
Yeah, I don't know that going thinner offers you any advantage, and I don't think going bigger gives you any advantage. If you were to try maybe a wooden dowel, then maybe. But that style of plane, like the one for the article and the ones that I'm making now, they're basically a Japanese style plane where you pull it. And so ultimately you want a fairly thin body. The bigger diameter of pin that you use, that means you need more material, right, to come up from the top, because if you have like a hole, you don't want to leave like an eighth of an inch of material up at the top, right? There's not enough space there. It's just it can break out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So yeah, it seems to work fine, and I don't have any dented wedges.
And you've made more than a few, and you've taught classes on them, and
yeah. I've done a bunch. We just finished another one recently, and everybody's planes are working fine. So
cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, so is it VicTeslinWoodworks.com?
Mm-hmm. No, it's just Vic Tesolin.
VicTesolin.com?
Yep.
Okay. And head on over there, pick up Vic's books, multiple.
2.
Maybe take a plane class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have? Is there a playmaking class up right now?
Not right now. No, we're just working on our winter schedule now.
Okay.
So
cool.
there's not one right now.
So get on the mailing list.
But you can always take private classes too.
There you go.
That seems to be what most people are into right now.
I'll tell you right now, though, Vic, you're very, very smart, and you have your imperial to metric conversion chart as a free download.
Yep.
That's worth getting on a mailing list right there, because that's on my wall right next to my drill press.
I find it's really helpful.
It's great. Yep. So yeah. Anybody got anything else? Nope.
Other than saying thanks for having me again. I always have a lot of fun, and especially when Mike's not here, because then we can tell all kinds of lies and stuff.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I miss Mike. But yeah, thank you so much. Like, this has been, I enjoy hanging out with you guys.
Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Thanks again to Vic for joining us. Head on over to foundationsofwoodworking.com and check out if Mike's online course is right for you or someone you love. And as always, please send in your questions, your comments, shoptalk@taunton.com. This show's driven by you, the listeners. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
That's awesome. So, speaking of Urban Dictionary, I didn't know what